Hello lovely people! Today we're going to be pulling apart Breakfast at Tiffany's, the book, and then the film, whilst also wearing an incredibly red dress because it's almost Valentine's Day and that's fitting. Now, we all know the film, or at least think we do. We've seen the poster for sale on every poster website going, and the various different types of merch that Audrey Hepburn's face has been plastered upon, not to mention the number of people who base their entire wardrobe on her. But do we really know the film? Do we know the book behind it? Do we know how queer it is? Yes, it is LGBTQ+ History Month here in the UK, so let's get rolling with some Queer History 101. If you're new to the channel, then hi, I'm Jessica. I make videos about disability, chronic illness and LGBTQ+ issues, sometimes vintage fashion too, because I just happen to look like this all the time. Sometimes they're sit-downs, sometimes they're more vloggy, sometimes they have my wife, sometimes they even have my baby. His name is Rupert, he's 8 months old. I'm very much in love with him. Generally there's also a dog in the background making a noise, or in today's case, sleeping silently in a corner. We're all very pleased at this turn of events. Today's video is also sponsored by BetterHelp, because on this channel we believe that mental health is just as important as physical health. Breakfast at Tiffany's is a novella by Truman Capote, published in 1958. In it, a writer recalls his past, early days living in New York City, when he made the acquaintance of his remarkable neighbour, Holly Golightly. The unnamed narrator befriends Holly in the autumn of 1943. The two are tenants in a brownstone apartment in Manhattan's Upper East Side. Holly, who is around the age of 19, is a country girl turned New York cafe society girl. As such, she has no job and lives by socializing with wealthy men who take her to clubs and restaurants and give her money and expensive presents. She hopes to marry one of them. Capote asserted that Holly was not a prostitute but an American geisha. If you've read the book or seen the film, you know that Holly isn't quite a prostitute. She is just an escort of sorts, the kind of girl who asks for £50 for the powder room, she's described as, i.e. much more than she needs to get for a tip, so she just keeps the change and can make money that way. Capote meant for her to express the sentiment of the big dreaming small-town girls who ran away to make it in New York City, but then found, as mid-century girls did, that, oops, they were girls, and there weren't actually that many employment opportunities open to them. And although, as Capote's biographer Gerald Clark wrote, half of the women he knew claimed to be the model for his wacky heroine, there are actually similarities between the lives of Holly and Capote's mother, Nina Capote. Both women were born in the rural South United States, with similar, described as hick birth names that they changed. Holly Golightly was born as Lula Mae Barnes in Texas, and Nina Capote was born as Lily Mae Falk in Alabama. Both left the husbands they married as teenagers and abandoned relatives that they loved and were responsible for, instead going to New York, and both achieved the cafe society status through relationships with wealthier men. Although Capote's mother was born 2 decades earlier than the fictional Holly Golightly. Whilst Clark also wrote the similarities between the author himself and the character of Holly, the narrator, who's given the name Paul in the film, so I am actually just going to call him Paul because it's really annoying saying the narrator, is very much a reflection of Capote himself. He's this young writer in New York, right at this period of sexual liberation. He's going to make a name for himself. He's surrounded by these dazzling, stylish women, and he's utterly enamored with this captivating girl in a completely platonic way. Because, much like Truman Capote, the book tells you it's gay once every 8 pages. Although, to be fair, if you don't know the lingo of the 1950s homosexual circles, it's maybe understandable if you missed it. Maybe. I mean, it's pretty gay. Our first idea that the narrator is gay comes from Holly's definition of a gay man from page 38. If the man doesn't like baseball, then he must like horses. And if he doesn't like either of them, well, I'm in trouble anyway. He doesn't like girls. Hands up if you too are apparently a gay man now. Holly throws a party, and the narrator recounts that he was left abandoned by the bookshelves. Of the books there, more than half were about horses, the rest baseball. Pretending an interest in horse flesh and how to tell it gave me sufficiently private opportunity for seizing Holly's friends. Not only does he not know anything about either of these topics, he doesn't like them either. He even goes horseback riding with Holly and almost gets himself killed because he doesn't know what he's doing. He is. Throughout the book, his disregard for typical heterosexual interests therefore essentially signifies his homosexuality, because I know, It's very stereotypical, like, cis-gay stuff, okay, but it was written in the 1950s. It was a time when lighting another man's cigarette was becoming, you know, basically equivalent to coming out in a film, in a sort of, if you know, you know kind of way. Other not so subtle hints come when Holly, asserting that she will not under any circumstances testify against Sally Tomato, who, yes, that is the name of a male mafia gangster in the book, slightly on the nose, says on page 93, well, I may be rotten to the core, Maud, but testify against a friend I will not. Maud was slang for either a male prostitute or a male homosexual. There's also a great bit about a metaphorical journey when the narrator comes by the end of the book. From Holly's apartment to Joe Bell's, he makes the following remark. Never mind why, but once I walked from New Orleans to Nancy's Landing, Mississippi. It was just under 500 miles. It was a light-hearted lark compared to the journey to Joe Bell Bar. Nancy's Landing doesn't actually exist as a real place. It's merely an allegory to express the narrator's coming out, since Nancy was used to refer to an effeminate homosexual man, and the mileage expresses the difficulty in coming out. And speaking of coming out, today's video is sponsored by BetterHelp, and with a network of over 20,000 licensed therapists, they have a number who specialize in helping you through big life changes, including those who specialize in LGBTQ+ issues and related things such as parenting or problems coming out. There are many professionals who also identify that way themselves, and you don't have to know the difficulty of shopping around to make sure that you find a therapist who, you know, is comfortable talking about these things, because it's right there in their profile. They're the world's largest therapy platform, making professional therapy accessible, affordable, and convenient. BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. You can start communicating with a therapist in less than 48 hours. Now, it isn't a crisis line. This is professional therapy done online, just making your life easier. If listening to me talk about LGBTQ+ issues makes you question anything in your life and feel like you need to work through something, even those of us who don't have big dramatic coming out stories still have things in our past that society gave us, like big freaking rocks, that perhaps it's time to take charge of your mental health with the help of an experienced professional. I use BetterHelp myself, and I honestly think they're great. With BetterHelp, you'll get timely and thoughtful responses in a variety of ways, whatever works for you, whether that be video, phone, instant message, journaling, and many more. You can also really easily change therapists if you want, and this way you stay on the service rather than, this therapist isn't working for me, there's another one over here who I think might be great, but waitlist. If you're interested in trying BetterHelp yourself, I have a special offer for my followers. Get 10% off your first month when you sign up using the link in the description. Now let's talk more about this book. But what of Holly herself? Well, we're probably used to thinking of her as Audrey Hepburn, icon, hetero icon at that. In the novella, however, potentially trigger warning for language here, as some consider it a slur, and some feel proud of it. I personally don't love it being used against me, but anyway. In the novella, Holly says explicitly that she doesn't identify as a dyke, which is interesting. You'd have to say that explicitly. Of course, I like dykes themselves. They don't scare me a bit, but stories about dykes bore the bejesus out of me. I can't put myself in their shoes. Yet, only a little bit later, Holly describes a situation with an old roommate in Hollywood. Of course, people couldn't help but think I must be a bit of a dyke myself. And of course, I am. Everyone is a bit. So what? That never discouraged a man yet. In fact, it seems to goad them on. I don't love that at all. I don't love that I have to say it either. When talking about remarrying, Holly says, I'd settle for Greta Garbo any day. Why not? A person ought to be able to marry men or women or... And then she just moves on with the conversation. The comments just kind of dropped in there lightly. So at least on the page, Holly's sexuality is freeform. It's something more fluid and more difficult to categorize than most other art forms allowed for at the time. In a 1968 interview with Playboy, the interviewer asked Capote, was Holly a lesbian? Because God works hard, but bisexual erasure works harder. Capote replied, of course, there's a lesbian component in every woman, but what intrigues me is the heterosexual male's fascination with lesbians. In other words, you asking me this question means you're part of the problem. Holly's sexuality doesn't matter quite so much as how the world perceives it and polices it. For Holly, sexuality is just part of the persona she's woven around herself, and it's how she stays alive. She's an icon for a new era, one where women can only be themselves when they run away from men's and society's expectation. Paul and Holly are bound to each each other precisely because their intimacy is platonic and therefore not transactional. Their togetherness is not filling a need for money or sex. It's a choice they are both willingly making for the pure pleasure of each other's company. But of course, it's not how movies work. That's not big screen enough. Paramount Pictures, who acquired the rights to the story, were initially reluctant to even make the film. It didn't have any of the key features they were looking for. There's no love story, there's no central conflict, there's no happy ending, and what on earth are they meant to do with a gay protagonist and a not a cool girl? The film was rewritten for the screen by George Axelrod, but even his ending wasn't good enough. Too close to Capote's novel, which ends on a sort of question mark. What does happen to Holly? Where does she disappear to after this? What's going to happen to these two people now? So an ending was just sort of tacked on by director Blake Edwards. The classic Hollywood romantic consummation with a big kiss. We know it. It's been done. The kiss itself was an apology to the audience and to the censor board. These two people are definitely getting married now, and they're definitely going to reform. We promise. And speaking of the censor board, looking back at Breakfast at Tiffany's, the film, in 2022, it isn't exactly high up there with shocking films. That iconic look of Audrey Hepburn in her little black dress and pearls, eating a pastry outside Tiffany's, or singing Moon River on the fire escape, seems pretty sanitized, but it's kind of vanilla. But not only did the film usher in a new fashion era for women, it also signaled a change in the average person's attitude towards sexuality. As the 1950s became the 1960s, sexual mores kind of strayed from the very rigid monogamy of the past into the culture that produced the free love movement. Obviously not saying everyone was in that movement at all, but still. However, as always, Hollywood lagged behind. The motion picture production code, which banned things like excessive kissing, the horror, or two adults being seen in the same bed, hence why all married couples sleep in twin beds or separate rooms in old movies, came into effect in 1934. I have a whole video about it, which you can watch by clicking the link in the description, or the card at the top in this corner. I used the wrong hands at the wrong time. You get it. Since then, homosexuality had been nodded to in film, but in coded language, like a pansy worn on the lapel, or the aforementioned lighting of another man's cigarette, or in very kind of stereotypical and mocking portrayals, almost always of effeminate men. Oh, you're allowed to do gay people if bad things happen. That's fine. They just have to get their comeuppance. Lesbians were generally always evil. Manly, predatory, had to be killed to protect the general population, and sweet women from their murderous ways. Why are lesbians always murderers? Oh wait, the answer is because that's supposed to be a man thing. By the time screenwriter George Axelrod was adapting Tiffany's for the screen in 1960, the production code's grip on American filmmaking was already beginning to loosen, largely thanks to British and other foreign films being much racier, and the advent of television, which from the start catered to its audience's actual desires rather than what it thought that they should be watching. TV. It was always kind of trash and we loved it. That's only part true and a massive oversimplification, but I'm just making a fun YouTube video, guys, about how gay Breakfast at Tiffany's is. Please don't come for me, ghosts of my past university essays. I studied the history of the screen. Can you tell? Anyway, Axelrod found himself with the challenge of satisfying audiences who wanted movies that reflected their changing attitudes, while still making a movie the tight rules of the production code would deem decent enough to release. So he just threw in some other stuff that he knew the board would cut out. He knew that the book was too gay and Holly was too sexual, so he made Paul into a heterosexual kept man, creating a conflict that the film needed. Deep down, Holly and Paul want to be together, but their need for money and stability keeps driving them back to their respective benefactors. And lots of sexually charged hetero stuff that the board could easily just kind of cut out, and hopefully they'd miss the rest. There was a scene detailing Paul's paid sexual relationship with his benefactor, 2E, cut. There was a scene with Holly on screen in only a bra and a half slip, cut. There was even a little, gasp, language, cut. So, by focusing on those, the board simply just kind of overlooked the film's other gay undertones and Holly's own status as an escort, because, it wasn't quite as bold as it had been in the book. A large part of that also has to do with the mystique and the pull of Audrey Hepburn. Capote had originally hoped for Marilyn Monroe to play Holly. She was the type of girl he had pictured whilst writing, but she and her advisors worried that playing a woman of the night would tarnish her image, which is interesting in light of how we think about Holly. I mean, we don't exactly think of that character as risque. When Audrey Hepburn was cast instead, Capote was less than thrilled. Paramount double-crossed me in every way and cast Audrey, he later claimed. But the Audrey persona is so strong, we don't believe that Holly could be anything outside of the bounds of it. The film coded in that she's a bisexual call girl, but she's also Audrey Hepburn. So we just read it as Audrey Hepburn being fabulous. We see Holly in a little black dress in a time of florals and chintz and big bold colours. Well, that's actually a hint at what she's doing at night. She's living outside of the norm. If you're a girl with a busy life, you don't have time for the sweet girly uniform. But instead, it's been turned into an iconic symbol of sophistication because everything Audrey did is iconic. Of course, in changing many things from the book, we do lose the beauty of the original platonic and uncomplicated relationship between Holly and the narrator. Capote is suggesting that the gendered structures of who makes the money, men, and who doesn't, women, might not be as enriching as the romance between a gay man and a bisexual woman. However, though it seems that Breakfast at Tiffany's homosexual thematic elements have been entirely erased in the film, and the sharp edges of the book are gone, writer George Axelrod, director Blake Edwards, they did manage to sneak in some little bits of same-sex desire, including one for Holly. In the scene where she and Paul go to what appears to be a strip club, a woman dances on stage while removing her dress. As she watches, Holly lowers her sunglasses and looks up at the woman. Though she says nothing, her face very clearly says, "Yes, please." And there you go, that is Breakfast at Tiffany's is queerer than you think. Did you know any of this before? Let me know in the comments down below. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I hope to see you in my next one. Remember, head to betterhelp.com/Jessica to take advantage of 10% off your first month. Now that's BetterHelp, one word, better, HELP, help. And I'll see you in my next video. Mwah!